from the maintenance side of the application. It brings over maintenance costs and populates a data mart, which then our lifecycle analysis tool uses to build a lifecycle cost analysis that as I'm showing here. So let's just back up and clear this out, and we'll start off with just building a new sample model. So I give a model a name, and then I come in and I select part of the suite that I want to look for. And generally what we break it into is categories. And so I want to look for I'm going to use some police vehicles here. I've got some black and white police sedans that I'm going to look at. So I select a group of like vehicles that I want to analyze. And then I have the option of setting up different model parameters. And those model parameters are assumptions that I can incorporate into this custom model to test my different data and different curves to analyze life cycles with. The system populates some default assumptions that I have by category that you see here. I'm going to go ahead and say I want to look over a 72-month horizon. I normally depreciate these vehicles over 60 months. I have a 5% salvage value assumption. I can go ahead and assume that. Maybe let's go down to 0. I need to put a discount factor. The life cycle cost calculation is a net present value calculation. It requires an interest rate. The system knows that my average purchase price is about $31,000 from my historic data. I can go ahead and assume that, or I can go ahead and put in, what happens if I buy these new vehicles and they're going to be $32,000. I'm going to value downtime at $10 an hour, and then I also have the ability to override my labor and fuel costs historically if I want to test some other assumptions. CAM also has a tool to remove outliers, and one of the challenges, as we talked about in the previous webinars, is bad data. But one of the things I can do in CAM is I can exclude, let's say, just as far as my maintenance data, I want to exclude any potentially really erroneous data. So I can be very conservative and look at everything within 3 distributions of the median. But maybe my downtime is not quite so good, and I've got some bad downtime. I want to be very narrow and just go with 2 deviations there, and I'm going to ignore the rest. I also have the ability to apply some trends. I can look at how far we go and try to trend some future data. I'm going to go ahead and do a linear trend going forward. And what this will do is it'll trend the data after my normal life cycle. And because there are some issues with historic data, particularly for underutilized vehicles that I've kept in use beyond their normal life. And there's a whole other webinar discussion on that topic for a future date. I go ahead and I'm just going to run the model. And when I click run, it went ahead and did my calculation for my capital cost based on a 32,000 cost, 0% salvage over 60 months. It calculated the value, and then it went through the data and figured out, all right, what my average cost is in each year of the life of the assets, and pulled that result summary out. And if I look down below, I'll see actually that although I may keep these vehicles 5 years, from an economic basis, I may want to keep these 6 years because my cost per year is at its lowest in year 6 at $15,384, as opposed to if I kept it 2 years, the cost would be $18,746 per year. So running these vehicles out 5 years or 6 years would be the best economic option for me. And I can look at this graphically and see maybe why is this the case. And part of the reason is because I am running this life cycle over a 5-year period, or depreciating over 5 years. I have no capital costs in year 6, and my maintenance costs actually trend down a little bit, in part because vehicles as they are aged, and fleets particularly, as they reach that end of life, they start getting shoved into a secondary role spare role, and I may not have as much maintenance. But I can see here where my operating costs are, what my equivalent costs are, and put them on the graph. This orange line shows my utilization, and see it is steeper in the later years, and then starts to drop off. Well, one of the things we can look at is why is this? We have scatter plots that display the raw data behind this calculation, and each of these lines represents a different unit and their costs in year 1, year 2, year 3, and so on. And you do see what you kind of expect is that costs do increase from year to year, from year 1 to year 3. And in general, that the average is moving up, and we can look down below and see that actually I have very high costs in year 1. Now this might be break-in costs. I might have high utilization in year 1. So maybe what I can do is let's flip to the utilization chart and see how that looks. Is there a big change there in utilization? And you do see that my utilization on average, my peak utilization actually declines from year 1 to year 6. So this fleet has a lot of utilization early on in its life, and so as a result, some of that maintenance cost is following there. Another one of the graphs we have actually does break down the fleet into quartiles and shows costs for high use, a low use, and the middle 50 quartiles. And I plot these on this graph, and I show my average annual use. See, my average annual use is peaking at near 20,000 miles per year on this, and then declines to about 10. So I can take that off, and now just look particularly, let's just look at this maintenance cost and see that in my low use quartile vehicles, I obviously have some data issues with those units, but I can see my high use and mid use, they're actually fairly comparable. But so I can go back in, and one of the things I can do is I can change some of my assumptions. Let's say that I wanted to go ahead and run this model again, and I want to be a little bit more conservative with some of this data on my maintenance. I can change that. Let's see if one of the things we found in running these is that the models are very susceptible to my capital costs. So let's change that out. We'll run it for 72 months and see how that factors. And maybe let's assume a different salvage factor. So now I can run this model again, and it'll go out and regenerate and come back with a new result set and see whether or not that changes potentially. Now, actually, in doing this, it is showing that, hey, within year 5 now, if I change that assumption and I do extend the depreciation out, that potentially there's less than a 5% variation. That's the yellow there, saying that although year 6 is the optimal year, the difference between year 6 and year 5 is less than 5%. So that would, potentially be a safe year as well. And again, I can see my new graph. See, I do have a change in the graph by, excluding some outliers, and that ultimately changes, potentially my outputs. And then again, I can look at my scatter plots and see how that has changed. You look at the maintenance, you'll see, yeah, I've eliminated a bunch of really erroneous data out here. So, CAM allows you to, move forward with building your own life cycle and making your own assumptions, and automates much of that process that we've shown you that, if I don't have CAM, you're going to have to manually collect that data, massage it, put it into a spreadsheet, and build your graphs. If CAM, as I said, is a module that's available to any of our customers, and if you're not an AssetWorks customer, CAM actually can work also with any other maintenance system. We can read that maintenance data in and populate our model results, and summarize any of the maintenance data that's available from other systems as well. So with that, I'd like to just ask if there's any questions about any of the functionality of CAM, or about the life cycle topic we've been discussing the last 3 sessions.
So we did have a couple of questions come in that you kind of touched on, but if you're not an AssetWorks customer, or you and you don't have fleet focus, can you elaborate on how CAM can work with other maintenance systems?
Sure. So CAM has its own database schema that we can populate with assets from another system. We use a batch loader process, and there's templates that the customer can extract their data to those templates. We can upload those templates in to populate the asset records and then the maintenance history. If you're an AssetWorks customer, we have interfaces in Fleet Focus that populate the CAM data mart once a month with maintenance, downtime, fuel, and other information that's needed to support the life cycle model. It's an automated process, so really all you need to do is set up those interfaces to run, and the system will be populated automatically, and you can just go run the models as needed. Generally, customers, would run these periodically once a year before they do their replacement planning to test the assumptions that they're going to have as to how long should I keep a vehicle and set my replacement criteria. That then feeds into another part of CAM, which is our planning module. We'll have a future webinar to talk about how I can build replacement plans using the data from CAM.
Okay, and so you mentioned kind of if you had Excel and you were just doing all this warranty tracking in Excel, what is the advantage of CAM? You touched on it a little bit, but what are your biggest pain points that you hear about?
So the advantage with CAM is that I don't have to go run a whole set of reports to get the data into my Excel spreadsheet. It's an automated process through those interfaces so that we know how to extract from Fleet Focus and from another maintenance system maintenance data. We exclude accident data automatically. We filter out non-accident costs like modifications or physical damage, and we aggregate that data automatically. And what's different from CAM to say the history in Fleet Focus, that data is typically looked at based on fiscal period of when did it occur in a calendar, where in CAM it's looked at based on years of life of the asset. What was in month 1, month 10, month 25 of that asset. And we aggregate that data so that we can build the models fairly quickly, as you see.
Okay, and where can you find cost per mile? That was one of the questions that came in.
So actually that's an enhancement that we're going to be adding to the CAM graph where to display a cost per mile graph. We actually have that in the model. We have the utilization per year, and we have the cost. It's a matter of simply dividing those costs into that cost per use per year, and then displaying that graphically. And our version 16.1 that'll be out this June will include that data, or that graph.
And if you're already an AssetWorks customer and you have M4, you're maybe upgrading to M5, but you wanted to use it now, can it work with M4?
Unfortunately, no, we have not set it up to automate the interface. It could be done manually. There is no interface from M4 to CAM. When you upgrade to M5, absolutely, we can bring we can implement CAM at the same time that we implement M5. And as soon as we have M5's data loaded, you can start to use CAM.
Okay. And can you change the depreciation method in CAM, and does it allow for sum of years depreciation?
Yes, it does. Actually, I'll quickly open that up and show in the setup that there are actually 3 different depreciation types that we support: straight line, double declining, and sum of years. And you can then run different model scenarios with different depreciation methods. And again, like I changed the year, the number of months, the term. So I could easily change this to a sum of year sample and run this same model again now using that different depreciation calculation method.
Okay, great. Well, it looks like that's all the questions we have for now, but Mark and I will be sticking around for a couple more minutes if you have any last-minute questions. So I'd like to thank you again for taking the time to attend today's presentation. Hopefully you've secured some valuable takeaways to keep in mind moving forward. Mark, I'd also like to thank you on behalf of AssetWorks once again for sharing your expertise and product highlights today. Also, we'll be posting the links to this webinar recording in the AssetWorks community. Please be sure to check that out, as well as our customer newsletter for information on future Power webinars. Thank you all for attending, and otherwise, have a great day. We'll look forward to seeing you at the next webinar series, and thanks again.